Some moments change everything. Not the dramatic, obvious ones you see coming from miles away, but the quiet, innocent moments that sneak up on you like a whisper in the dark. For me, that moment happened on a Tuesday afternoon when I thought I was completely alone in the house. My name is Maya, and at 24, I had always prided myself on being careful, responsible, the kind of person who thought through every decision twice. I lived in my family's old house while finishing my master's degree, an arrangement that worked perfectly since my parents had moved to Dubai for my father's work. The house was mine, my sanctuary, my safe space where I could be completely myself without judgment or expectation. That Tuesday started like any other. I had spent the morning at the university library, the afternoon was dedicated to thesis writing, and I was looking forward to a quiet evening. The monsoon season had arrived early that year, and the sound of rain against the windows created the perfect backdrop for concentration. I was lost in my research when my phone buzzed with a text. From my mother, Beta tumhara Arjun uncle aa raha hai Bangalore se. An emergency business meeting cancelled ho gaya, so he'll stay tonight. Take care of him, okay? Arjun uncle. The name alone made my stomach do a little flip that I had spent 3 years trying to ignore. He wasn't really my uncle. He was my father's best friend from college, practically family, but not blood-related. At 35, he was successful, charming, and had this way of looking at you like you were the most interesting person in the world. More importantly, he was the man I had harbored the most inappropriate crush on since I was 21. Koi problem nahi, Mom. I'll prepare the guest room, I typed back, my heart already beating faster at the thought of spending an evening alone with him. The house suddenly felt different, charged with anticipation. I found myself looking around. With critical eyes, was everything clean enough? Did I need to cook something special? What was I even going to wear? That last thought stopped me cold. What was I going to wear? Why did it matter? He was practically family, for God's sake. But even as I scolded myself, I couldn't help but think about the last time I'd seen him, at my cousin's wedding 6 months ago. The way he'd smiled when he saw me, the way he'd said, "Maya, you look beautiful," in that voice that had made my knees weak. By 6 in the evening, I had cleaned the house, prepared dinner, and worked myself into a state of nervous anticipation that I tried desperately to rationalize away. I was being ridiculous. This was Arjun uncle, the man who had taught me to drive, who had brought me books from his travels, who had always treated me like the daughter he never had. The doorbell rang at exactly 7 o'clock. I opened the door to find him standing there, slightly damp from the rain, briefcase in one hand and that familiar smile on his face. But something was different about the way he looked at me. His eyes seemed to linger a moment longer than usual, taking in my appearance with an intensity that made my cheeks burn. "Maya," he said, and there was something in his voice that I couldn't quite identify. "You look—" He trailed off, shaking, his head as if clearing unwanted thoughts. "Beautiful," he finished quietly. "You look beautiful." "Thank you," I managed, stepping aside to let him in. "Come in. You must be tired." As he passed by me, I caught the scent of his cologne mixed with rain and something uniquely him. It was a smell I had memorized years ago without realizing it, and it hit me now like a physical force. "The house looks exactly the same," he said, looking around with nostalgia. "Except somehow different." "Different how?" He looked at me for a long moment before answering. "More grown up, like you." There it was again, that strange undercurrent in his voice that made my pulse quicken. "I've made dinner," I said quickly, needing to break the tension that seemed to be building between us. "Are you hungry?" "Starving," he replied, but his eyes were still on my face, not thinking about food at all. We settled into an easy conversation over dinner, talking about his work, my studies, and family gossip. But underneath the familiar banter, there was something new, something electric that crackled between us every time our eyes met, every time our fingers accidentally brushed when reaching for the same dish. "You know," he said as I cleared the plates, "I still remember when you were this shy little girl who used to hide behind your father whenever I visited." I laughed, but there was a nervous edge to it. I wasn't shy. I was just careful around strangers. Stranger? He raised an eyebrow. Is that what I am to you? A stranger? No, I said softly. You're not a stranger. You're... I stopped, not sure how to finish that sentence. What was he to me? Not an uncle, not really. Not quite family, but more than a friend. Something indefinable. Something that had been growing and changing as I grew and changed. I'm what? He prompted, his voice gentle but insistent. You're important to me, I said finally. You've always been important to me. Something shifted in his expression, a flash of vulnerability that I had never seen before. Maya, he said, then stopped himself. I should probably get some rest. It's been a long day, but neither of us moved. We stood there in the kitchen, the sound of rain against the windows, the only noise except for our slightly uneven breathing. Of course, I said finally. I've prepared the guest room. Fresh towels are on the bed. Thank you, he said, but his voice sounded strange, rough. As he headed toward the stairs, I called after him. Arjun, uncle? He turned back, and the look on his face made my heart skip. If you need anything at all, just let me know. I will, he said quietly. Good night, Maya. Good night. I watched him disappear up the stairs, then leaned against the kitchen counter, trying to calm my racing heart. This was dangerous territory, and I knew it. But there was something about the way he had looked at me tonight, something about the careful distance he seemed to be maintaining, that made me wonder if the feelings I had been fighting for 3 years might not be as one-sided as I had always assumed. Upstairs, I could hear the sound of him moving around the guest room, the creak of floorboards, the soft thud of his suitcase being opened. I tried to focus on cleaning up the kitchen, but my mind kept wandering to the man just 1 floor above me. An hour later, I decided to take a shower and get ready for bed. My room was at the end of the hallway, the guest room in the middle, and I could see a strip of light under his door as I passed by. The sound of typing drifted through the wood. He was probably catching up on work. In my room, I selected my clothes for the next day and laid them out carefully, trying to pretend I wasn't thinking about what he might think of my choices. Then I gathered my pajamas and headed for the bathroom. But as I reached for the door handle, I heard his voice calling from downstairs. Maya, do you have any coffee? I can't seem to find any in the kitchen. Top shelf, left cabinet. I called back. Do you want me to make some? No, I've got it. Thank you. I smiled and stepped into the bathroom, closing the door behind me. The hot water felt wonderful against my skin, washing away the tension of the day and the strange nervousness that had been building all evening. I took my time, letting the warmth relax muscles I hadn't realized were tight. When I finally stepped out of the shower, I felt more like myself again. Whatever weird energy had been crackling between Arjun, Uncle and me was probably just in my imagination. He was being polite, maybe a little nostalgic about watching me grow up. I was reading too much into innocent comments and looks. I wrapped a towel around myself and reached for my pajamas, only to realize with horror that I had left them on my bed. Stupid, I muttered to myself. In my distraction, I had only grabbed my clothes for tomorrow, not my sleepwear. I peeked out of the bathroom door. The hallway was dark except for the light still coming from under the guest room door. I could make a quick dash to my room, grab my pajamas, and be back in the bathroom in seconds. He was probably still working and wouldn't even notice. Taking a deep breath, I clutched my towel tightly around myself and stepped into the hallway. That's when everything changed, because at the exact moment I emerged from the bathroom, the guest room door opened and Arjun's uncle stepped into the hallway carrying an empty coffee mug. For a frozen moment, we just stared at each other. I was standing there in nothing but a towel, my hair wet and curling around my shoulders, my skin still flushed from the hot shower. He was in jeans and a t-shirt, casual in a way I had never seen him before, his hair slightly mussed, but it wasn't the state of undress that made the moment so charged. It was the way he looked at me, the way his eyes traveled from my face down to where the towel was knotted above my chest, then quickly back up, as if he was fighting not to look but couldn't help himself. I'm sorry, he said, his voice hoarse. I was just... the coffee mug. It's okay, I whispered, but I couldn't seem to move, couldn't seem to break the spell that had fallen over us. Neither of us moved. We stood there in the dim hallway, the air between us crackling with something dangerous and forbidden and absolutely undeniable. And in that moment, I saw something in his eyes that changed everything I thought I knew about him, about us, about the careful boundaries that had always existed between us. I saw desire. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire, ready to snap at the slightest movement. I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears, could see the rapid rise and fall of his chest as he struggled with whatever was happening between us. Maya, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. You should. You should go to your room. But even as he said it, he didn't move. His eyes were locked on mine with an intensity that made my legs feel weak. The coffee mug in his hand seemed forgotten, and I noticed his knuckles were white from gripping it so tightly. I know, I breathed, but my feet remained rooted to the spot. I was just getting my... I gestured helplessly toward my room, suddenly aware of how the towel had shifted slightly during our frozen tableau. His gaze flickered downward for just a fraction of a second before he squeezed his eyes shut, as if he was in physical pain. God, he muttered under his breath. This is... wrong? I finished for him, surprised by the steadiness of my own voice. His eyes snapped open, and the raw emotion I saw there nearly knocked me off my feet. Dangerous, he corrected. This is dangerous, Maya. For both of us. But neither of us moved to break the spell. Instead, we stood there in the dim hallway, the air between us thick with 3 years of unspoken feelings and denied attraction. Arjun uncle, I started, but he cut me off with a sharp shake of his head. Don't, he said hoarsely. Don't call me that. Not right now. The words hung between us, loaded with meaning, because we both knew what he was really saying. That in this moment, in this charged space between the bathroom and our respective bedrooms, he wasn't my father's friend, wasn't the man who had taught me to drive or brought me books from his travels. He was just a man looking at a woman with unmistakable want in his eyes. Then what should I call you? I asked, my voice barely audible. Nothing, he said, but his voice cracked. You should go to your room and pretend this never happened. And if I don't want to pretend? The question slipped out before I could stop it, surprising us both. I saw his grip on the coffee mug tighten even further, saw the muscle in his jaw clench as he fought some internal battle. Maya, he said, and my name sounded different on his lips. Rougher, more intimate. You don't know what you're saying. I'm 24 years old, I said, taking a small step closer to him. I know exactly what I'm saying. No. He stepped back, nearly stumbling in his haste to put distance between us. No, you don't, because if you did, you wouldn't be standing there looking at me like that. Like what? Like you want me to forget that I've known you since you were a child. Like you want me to forget that your father trusts me. Like you want me to forget every reason why this is impossible. His words should have stung, should have brought me back to my senses. Instead, they only confirmed what I had suspected but never dared to believe, that the attraction I felt wasn't one-sided. Do you want to forget? I asked softly. The coffee mug slipped from his fingers, crashing to the floor and shattering into pieces. Neither of us looked down at the mess. We were too busy staring at each other, both breathing hard, both teetering on the edge of a precipice that we knew we shouldn't cross. Every day, he admitted, his voice raw with honesty. God help me, Maya. I want to forget every single day. The confession hung between us like a bridge, one that either of us could choose to cross or burn down forever. Then forget, I whispered, taking another step toward him. Just for tonight, just for this moment, forget everything except... Except what? Except this. I gestured to the space between us, to the electricity that crackled in the air, to the way we were both trembling with want and fear, and the terrible knowledge that we were about to cross a line that could never be uncrossed. He stared at me for a long moment, his chest rising and falling rapidly. I could see the war being fought behind his eyes. Desire battling with responsibility. Want wrestling with morality. "If I touch you," he said finally, his voice so quiet, I had to strain to hear him. "If I allow myself even one moment of weakness, I won't be able to stop." "Then don't stop," I said, and the words seemed to echo in the hallway like a dare. Something shifted in his expression then, something primal and hungry that made my knees nearly buckle. He took a step toward me, then another, until he was close. Enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. "You don't understand," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I've been fighting this for 3 years. 3 years of pretending that I don't notice the way you've grown into this beautiful, incredible woman. 3 years of lying awake at night thinking about what it would be like to—" He stopped himself, running his hands through his hair in frustration. "To what?" I prompted, my voice barely a whisper. Instead of answering, he reached out slowly, giving me every opportunity to step away. His fingers barely grazed my cheek, but the contact sent electricity shooting through my entire body. "To touch you like this," he murmured, his thumb tracing along my jawline. "To hold you like I've been dreaming about. To kiss you until neither of us can remember why this is wrong." I leaned into his touch, my eyes fluttering closed at the sensation I had imagined so many times but never experienced. "Maya," he breathed, and I opened my eyes to find him staring at me with an expression that was equal parts agony and adoration. "I'm not that little girl anymore," I said softly. "I haven't been for a long time." "I know," he replied, his other hand coming up to frame my face. "That's what terrifies me. Because when I look at you now, all I see is—" "What do you see?" "Everything I can't have," he whispered. "Everything I shouldn't want." We were so close now that I could feel his breath on my face, could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. The towel felt precarious around my body, and I was acutely aware that one wrong move would send it tumbling to the floor. "But you do want it," I said, not a question but a statement. "More than I've ever wanted anything in my life," he admitted, his voice breaking on the words. His thumbs traced gentle circles on my cheeks, and I could feel him trembling with the effort of holding back. We were balanced on a knife's edge, both of us knowing that the next move would change everything. "Then take it," I whispered, rising up on my toes so that our lips were only inches apart. "Maya." His voice was a warning, a plea, a prayer all rolled into one. "Take me," I breathed against his lips. For a moment I thought he would. I could see the exact second when his resolve began to crumble, when desire finally began to win the war against his conscience. His eyes dropped to my lips, and he leaned down slowly, so slowly, until... The sound of a car door slamming in the driveway shattered the moment like glass. We sprang apart as if we'd been burned, both breathing heavily, both staring at each other with wide, shocked eyes. The spell was broken, reality crashing back down around us like a cold wave. That's probably the neighbor," I stammered, clutching my towel more tightly around myself. "They work late shifts." But the interruption had served its purpose. The moment was gone, and with it, whatever madness had possessed us both. "I should," he began, then stopped, seemingly unable to form coherent thoughts. "Go to your room," I finished for him. "Yes, we both should." He nodded, bending down to pick up the pieces of the broken coffee mug with shaking hands. I watched him for a moment, then turned and fled to my bedroom, closing the door behind me and leaning against it as if I could physically hold back the emotions threatening to overwhelm me. I pressed my palms against my burning cheeks, trying to process what had just happened. We had almost. God, we had almost crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. And the most terrifying part wasn't that we had almost done it. It was that I wanted to go back out there and finish what we'd started. Through the thin walls, I could hear him moving around in the guest room, could hear the soft thud of his footsteps as he paced back and forth. Was he regretting what had almost happened? Was he planning to leave first thing in the morning? Or was he lying in bed just a few feet away thinking about me the same way I was thinking about him? I changed into my pajamas with trembling hands, my skin still burning from his touch. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see the way he had looked at me, could feel the ghost of his thumbs on my cheeks. Hours passed, but sleep remained elusive. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the house settling around us. Once I thought I heard his door open and heard soft footsteps in the hallway. My heart raced as I imagined him standing outside my door, wrestling with the same demons that were tormenting me, but the footsteps retreated, and silence fell over the house again. By the time dawn began to creep through my windows, I had made a decision. What had happened between us couldn't be ignored or forgotten. We needed to talk about it, needed to figure out what it meant and where we went from here. But when I finally worked up the courage to go downstairs, I found a note on the kitchen counter in his familiar handwriting. Maya, had to leave early for a client meeting. Thank you for dinner and for your hospitality. Please give my regards to your parents. Just like that, he was gone. No explanation, no acknowledgement of what had passed between us, no indication of when, or if, I might see him again. I crumpled the note in my fist, fighting back tears of frustration and disappointment. He had run. After 3 years of careful distance and unspoken attraction, after one moment of brutal honesty and near surrender, he had simply run away. But as I stood there in the empty kitchen, surrounded by the lingering scent of his cologne and the memory of his touch, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. That what had started in a darkened hallway between a bathroom and a bedroom was too powerful to be ended by a hastily scrawled note and an early morning escape. Some lines once approached can never be forgotten. Some desires once acknowledged can never be denied, and some love, no matter how forbidden, refuses to be contained by conventional boundaries. The question was, what was I prepared to do about it? 2 months passed like a slow torture. 2 months of replaying that night over and over in my mind, of jumping every time my phone rang, hoping it might be him. 2 months of my mother asking innocent questions about why Arjun uncle hadn't called, why he seemed so busy whenever she tried to reach him. I threw myself into my thesis, spending long hours at the library, but even academic research couldn't quiet the storm of emotions he had left behind. Every night, I found myself standing in that same hallway, remembering the weight of his hands on my face, the raw hunger in his eyes, the way my name had sounded on his lips like a prayer and a curse combined. Then, on a Thursday evening in late August, my phone buzzed with a message that made my heart stop. I can't stay away anymore. I'm coming to see you tonight. If you don't want me there, tell me now. Otherwise, I won't be able to leave again. My hands were shaking as I read the message once, twice, 3 times. This was it. The moment of truth. I could send him away. Preserve whatever was left of our old relationship. Maintain the boundaries that society and family expected us to respect. Or I could let him come, knowing that everything would change forever. I typed and deleted a dozen responses before finally settling on 5 simple words. I'll be waiting for you. The next 3 hours were the longest of my life. I showered, changed clothes twice, paced through the house like a caged animal. The monsoon had returned with a vengeance, rain lashing against the windows as if the very sky was reflecting the turmoil in my heart. When the doorbell finally rang at 10 o'clock, I nearly jumped out of my skin. I opened the door to find him standing there, completely soaked from the rain, his usually perfect hair plastered to his forehead. But it was his eyes that stole my breath. Wild, desperate, filled with the same longing that had been eating me alive for 2 months. Maya, he said, and my name sounded like it had been torn from his throat. You came, I whispered. I had 2. He stepped inside, water dripping from his clothes onto the floor. I tried to stay away. God knows I tried, but I can't eat, can't sleep, can't think about anything except what? Except you. Except that night. Except how it felt to almost... He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. We both knew what he meant. I closed the door behind him, and suddenly we were alone again, the air between us, crackling with the same electricity that had nearly consumed us 2 months ago. I brought you a towel, I said unnecessarily, grabbing one from the hallway closet. As I handed it to him, our fingers brushed and the contact sent a jolt of electricity up my arm. His eyes darkened at the touch, and I knew he felt it too. "Maya," he said softly, "before anything else happens, I need you to understand something." I nodded, not trusting my voice. "If we cross this line tonight, there's no going back. Your parents, our families, everyone who knows us, they'll never understand. We'll have to live with the consequences of whatever decision we make right here, right now." "I know," I whispered. "I'm 15 years older than you. I've known you since you were a child. By every measure of society and morality, this is wrong." "I know that too." He stared at me for a long moment, searching my face. "Then why are you still standing here?" "Because," I said, taking a step closer to him, "some things are bigger than right and wrong. Some feelings are too powerful to be contained by other people's rules." "Maya." "Because I love you," I said, the words finally spilling out after 3 years of being held captive in my heart. Not as an uncle, not as a family friend, but as a man. I've loved you since I was 21 years old, and I'm tired of pretending otherwise. The towel fell from his hands as he stared at me, his face a mixture of agony and joy. "You can't love me," he said desperately. "It's impossible." "Why? Because you're older? Because of what other people will think? Or because you can't love me back?" "Because I love you too much," he said, his voice breaking. "Because I love you. So much it's destroying me. Because every day I don't have you feels like a little death." And then, finally, after 3 years of denial and 2 months of separation and a lifetime of following other people's rules, he crossed the space between us and pulled me into his arms. The kiss was everything I had dreamed it would be and more. Desperate, hungry, filled with years of suppressed longing. His hands tangled in my hair, and I could taste the rain on his lips, could feel the tremor in his body as he held me against him. "God, Maya," he breathed against my mouth. "What are we doing?" "Living," I whispered back, "finally living." We kissed again, deeper this time, and I felt something inside me that had been wound tight for years finally released. This was right. Whatever anyone else thought, whatever consequences we would face, this moment was absolutely right. "I love you," he said against my lips. "I love you, and I'm sorry I ran away. I'm sorry I wasted 2 months when we could have been—" "We're here now," I said, cutting off his apologies with another kiss. "That's all that matters." His hands cupped my face the same way they had that night in the hallway. But this time there was no hesitation, no fear of crossing boundaries. This time, when he looked at me, it was with the full weight of acknowledged love. "Are you sure?" he asked one final time. "Because once we do this, there's no pretending it never happened. No going back to the way things were." "I don't want to go back," I said firmly. "I want to go forward. With you." The smile that spread across his face was like sunrise after the longest night. He lifted me into his arms, and I wrapped my legs around his waist, my heart racing with anticipation and love and the incredible freedom of finally being honest about what we both felt. "I love you, Maya," he said as he carried me toward the stairs. "My beautiful, impossible, wonderful Maya." "I love you too," I replied, pressing kisses to his neck, his jaw, anywhere I could reach. "I love you too, Arjun. Not uncle, not family. Friends. Just Arjun. The man I loved. The man who loved me back. The man who had finally stopped running from the most beautiful mistake we had ever made." Outside, the storm raged on, but inside, in the warmth of each other's arms, we had found our shelter. Some boundaries, once crossed, reveal not disaster but destiny. Some love, no matter how forbidden, refuses to be denied. And sometimes, just sometimes, the most impossible love turns out to be the most necessary one of all. As he carried me up the stairs, rain still dripping from his hair, I knew that everything was about to change. Our families would be shocked, society would judge us, and the road ahead would be difficult. But wrapped in his arms, feeling the steady beat of his heart against mine, I also knew that some love is worth any price. Some happiness is worth any risk. And some moments, like the one where everything shifted between us forever, are worth a lifetime of consequences. This was our beginning, complicated, controversial, and absolutely unstoppable. And as the door to my bedroom closed behind us, I knew that whatever came next, we would face it together, because some love stories don't follow the rules. And sometimes, that's exactly what makes them worth telling.